You're listening to Off the Record, presented by the Hotard Huddle, the podcast that gives you all the latest sports talk with an unadulterated, uncensored twist.
3rd and 4, looks into the nickel of San Francisco in the secondary. Hey, somebody has run out on the field. Some goofball in a hat and a red shirt. Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that
out.
man.
Here comes the blue coat, Kevin.
Oh, they got him.
Here comes the blue coats.
Oh, and they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Oh, that was the most exciting thing to happen tonight.
I tell you what, that was a great call on your part. That was a great call. All right, I'm ready for the last 11:31 now, Kevin. Let's go.
Look at the police. They've surrounded this man like he is... like he's just robbed a bank.
I tell you what, he got a whole lap in before they got him. I mean, that was pretty good. I expected him to go down much sooner.
Yeah. But I hope it was worth it, my friend, because you've got a night in the clink coming up.
Michael Hotard alongside Richard Fischer. This is Off the Record. What you just heard was a play-by-play from Kevin Harlan. If you did not see this, holy crap. So, in the Monday Night Football game, between the new Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers, a fan ran onto the field, went streaking, and Kevin Harlan crushed it. So he is getting dubbed with our quote of the week for that play-by-play you just heard. Now, Richard, as someone who has done play-by-play, and now granted, not at the NFL level, but I do have some experience with the high school level, it is not easy, and I don't know what I would do if some guy just randomly runs onto the field, starts streaking. I'm not sure what I would do, and Kevin Harlan nailed it to a T. It was absolutely brilliant, and that guy deserves an award strictly for that play-by-play call.
Yeah, Kevin Harlan's the best. I mean, I'd hope that if you or I were in a situation like that doing a high school game, we'd be half as good or even a quarter as good as that. I mean, that you want to talk about painting a picture with words. There's just not enough great you can say about it. I've been a Kevin Harlan fan for a long time, Michael, and last night, probably the best I've heard him, and that's saying quite a bit because he's really good at capturing the emotion of the moment. And he sure did that last night when that goofball, that buffoon ran out on the field. I don't know what my favorite part was, whether it was when he said, he's drunk, or whether it was when he said he's waving his hands in the air, or maybe the most apropos and accurate part when he said this is the most exciting thing that's happened tonight. Because it was. Last night's game was terrible except for that moment. So, hats off to Kevin Harlan. He continues to be tremendous, and I think we're going to be hearing that call for years in the future.
I agree with everything you said. Kevin Harlan is one of the best, and he certainly added life and painted that picture for everyone listening, which is what your job is to do, and it is not easy. But the whole thing about the waving his hands in the air. Oh, he's got his shirt off. Oh, he's at the 40. He's at the 50. Oh, he's back at the 40. He's turning around and going the other way. Like, the whole thing was just bloody brilliant. And I can't say enough about it. That is certainly, like you said, going to be something that we're going to hear for years to come when we talk about Kevin Harlan. Let's talk a little bit about the guy that ran onto the field, because the TV broadcast immediately was just showing Jeff Fischer in the bench. He got maybe 2 seconds of screen time. And this is something we see all the time in live sporting events, or entertainment events, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's wrestling. It happens all the time. And, I mean, if you're going to do something crazy like that, pick a sport like baseball, because I'm pretty sure that's the only sport that they actually show the idiots running on the field for almost the whole time. So you're not going to really get your 15 minutes of fame doing this during an NFL event. And, if you dare, if it were me, if I was going to pull something stupid like that and spend the night in the Slammer, I'm at least going to get something out of it. And I'm doing it during a baseball game where I know they're going to show it.
Well, I hope it was worth it, because he's spending the night in the clink. It was just too great. And obviously the radio broadcast can have a little bit more leeway with this than the television broadcast can, because we see it all the time where, except for baseball, like you mentioned, the television broadcast will just basically ignore that anything's actually going on out in the field. And I understand why. I mean, you don't want to give these guys that moment in the sun, and you don't want to encourage others to do this at other sporting events in the future. But, man, it's just so much more fun whenever you get to watch it. And I wish that we would have been able to see it, but thank goodness it's 2016. We can pull open YouTube and find a clip of it of somebody taking an iPhone with their in the stand. Exactly.
And whenever you watch that Kevin Harlan call, it's going to be the first video in the suggested videos that pops up. As I'm sure everyone who has a smartphone and their smartphone didn't die before that game, I'm sure they had their phones out. I mean, I certainly would have, and I get why they don't show it. But like you said, it just makes it more fun getting to actually see it happen. It's buffoonery at its finest. No one got hurt, and in most of these cases, no one really.
Chest when he was beating it, that probably got a little bit hurt.
Right. But a lot of times when this happens during the sporting event, I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, but what it is, it's funny. And anytime someone does it, I'd be lying if I told you I'd get pissed off whenever it happens. So anyway, other than that, Richard, anything to add on the Kevin Harlan front and this dude who decided to run onto the field?
What about the security guards here? Like, is this like the moment they've been waiting for their entire lives? Like, you have to think this is kind of like a Terry Tate office linebacker type thing, where it's like it's their one opportunity to really lay somebody out and not get charged for it and get congratulated for it. It's like it's the only time in life that I can think of, other than football or a sporting event between the lines, where it's completely acceptable to just completely take someone out and no one will say any ill will toward you for doing so. So you got to be pretty excited for those guys when they get their rare opportunity to do something like that.
Now, I'm not a big guy, but some guy runs out on the field, I'm probably launching my shoulder into that guy's chest and trying to get him on a blindside hit. And I'm certainly going to be the security guard that gets up, beats his chest. I might do the Sean Lights Out Merriman taunt after I do it. And I'm certainly going to have some fun with it because, well, if you haven't guessed it already, I'm a bit of a ham and I'm a bit of a show-off, Deal with it.
Oh, we know.
And I'll show off more later in this show. But moving on, so we have some great stuff coming up. We're going to talk right now about one of the biggest upsets, or almost upsets in college football over the weekend. We're going to get into our Asshat of the week. We're going to talk some LSU and their newfound quarterback, Danny Etling. I have a really funny story coming up later in this show that happened to me in New York that I don't think many people can say has happened to them. It's really gross. It's really vulgar. And I should be more pissed off than I am about it, but it's kind of funny. And then we're obviously going to talk about our pick'ems for the NFL this week, as well as fantasy, and of course our athlete of the week. So got a lot coming up, but moving on to the next topic, as I said, one of the biggest almost upsets in college football over the weekend, and it pertained to my alma mater, and that is the one, the only Nicholls State University. I worked for that football team for 4 years, and in those 4 years, I got to witness some really great moments. The first year I filmed for the program, we won all of our trophy games that year, so that was pretty cool to see. After that, it started going downhill quick, and we got skunked by Oregon 70-something to, I think, 7. Oregon and Oregon State both clobbered us. We even lost to a Division II program when I was there, and it wasn't a good ride for Nicholls. Not to say I didn't have fun. I absolutely loved all 4 years of that, but I could not be happier for those guys on the team who some of them I am still friends with. A lot of them I don't know at this point, as most of the guys I know fizzled out and are moving on with their lives. But shout out to Tim Rebo and the Colonels, as this past weekend they were barely edged out by an SEC school, and not your bottom feeder. We're talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. They wound up losing that game by 2 points, and had it not been for a fumble return for a touchdown earlier in that game, we could be talking about maybe the biggest upset in college football, and Nicholls could very well be winning an ESPY in July if that happened. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. Nicholls still lost, but not all losses are created equal. And what I mean by that, yeah, sure, that's always gonna that loss is going to go in the L column for the season. However, the moral victory that Nicholls received for hanging with one of the better SEC programs, it's unprecedented. If I were those players and I'm riding on that bus back, sure, I might be a little disappointed, but more than disappointed, I'm pumped up that we just went into one of the top dogs and punched him in the mouth and hung with him for an entire football game. This game was never out of hand. It was close the entire time. And my frickin' Colonels gave me a hell of a thrill on Saturday, and I am so proud of that team. And one last shout out to them, to the head coach, Tim Rebo, who might very well be up there with Gordon Bombay for greatest coach of all time. Period.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tremendous performance by Nicholls. Unfortunately, I only watched about 20, 30 plays of this game. In retrospect, I wish I would have seen more of it. But in the plays that I did watch, this was not a fluke. This was not one of those games where Georgia shot themselves in the foot, fumbled the ball, threw an inopportune interception. Nicholls held up physically. In fact, and I would even go as far as to say that they more than held up physically. They were in the backfield tackling Georgia for a loss on far more plays than the size difference between the linemen of both teams should have dictated. It was really a tremendous performance by Nicholls. Even though they don't get the victory, they did cover by 53.5 points. That's an actual number. They were a 55.5 point underdog and lost by 2. I can't remember. I off the top of my head, I cannot remember a single instance ever where a team has covered by more than 50 points. And that's what Nicholls did on Saturday. Hats off to them. I'm as big of a Tim Rebo fan as you are after this outing. Now, what would worry me is Nicholls, of course, playing against a team like Georgia, where assistant coaches are making north of $1 million. So Tim Rebo going up against a school where the opponent's assistant coaches are getting 10 times more than what the Nicholls head coach is making. So how long is he going to be in town? I know this is his alma mater, but if he does a good job this season, I think he could be in for a hefty raise, even if it's just a coordinator position at a bigger school. So that's something to keep your eye on. But for the moment, congratulations to Nicholls, and you absolutely have to think that they're in the running to win the Southland Championship after a performance like that. Coaching is everything in college football, and looks like Nicholls has it. Good for them.
I was actually texting a good friend of mine who played for Nicholls when I was there, and he was telling me about what Coach Rebo does at practice. When head coach Charlie Stubbs was there, that's who I worked for. That's who was the head coach in all 4 years I worked there. And I love that guy to death. He did a lot for me personally. But it just wasn't the right fit. The reality is you just got to look back and say it's not the right fit. There was a lot of disconnect between he and the players. And it showed on Saturdays. Rebo comes in and, that's where he went to school. He's from Norco, Louisiana, right down the road from where I'm broadcasting this. And he's just that small-town guy. He's that small-town vibe. He brings a lot of energy. He brings a lot of passion, and he rallies players. I remember texting another friend of mine who played for UL after, Nicholls officially hired Rebo. And, my buddy told me then, your team just struck gold. Like, you give it 1 or 2 years, y'all are going to be on the up and up, and y'all are going to be on the rise. And, I knew about Rebo prior to that, and I didn't need my friend to tell me that because I knew his history. But, my friend played under him, and he was like, players are going to love him, bottom line. And that's what Nicholls needed. And, like I said, I was talking to one of my friends who played at Nicholls as well, and he was telling me that what Rebo does at practice, he's strictly the head coach. He's not the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach like former head coach Charlie Stubbs was. He is strictly a head coach. He has guys in place and he hires good people. And he literally just runs around practice, dipping in a little bit of everything and yelling at people who are doing it wrong, basically. And that gets back to my point. As far as hiring good people, because in the industry I currently work in, and something I've always believed in, surround yourself with talent. And the second Rebo got in there, he cleaned house and he's like, no, we're rebuilding this from the ground up. And, this is just the beginning of what's happening down there in good old Thibodaux, Louisiana. And I, for one, like I said, I can't stress enough how pumped I am for not just the players there now, for the former players who got their teeth kicked in every week, getting blasted, because Nicholls Nation finally has something to be proud of in the realm of football. They haven't won a conference championship since 2005. And prior to that, I believe it was the 80s when they had guys like Mark Carrier. This is your typical bottom-feeding, losing program. But there's a changing of the guard right now in Thibodaux, and I am freaking stoked.
I hope you're right, Michael. We've seen times in the past where teams have had really good showings, and it was kind of an aberration, and they don't really continue that level of play. But I think when you've got the culture that Nicholls has right now with Rebo, and even though they didn't win on Saturday, I think that they have to take this as more than a moral victory. They almost have to take this almost as if they went to Georgia and won. Because we're just. I hate to keep bringing up money, but the real fact of the matter is that a school like Georgia probably shouldn't ever play a school like Nicholls, because the football budget is just so infinitesimal in Thibodeau compared to what it is in Athens. To play against a team like that and to look like you belong on the same field as a team like that resonates. And I think it's gonna hurt Georgia negatively, and I think it's gonna help Nicholls positively as the season progresses. And I hope you're right about this being a new day for Nicholls athletics, because fans of that school have toiled long enough with athletic programs that just haven't really achieved much. So I'm really glad to see some success in Thibodeau.
You and me both, man. We'll go ahead and move on here. We have a everyone's favorite segment, the Asshat of the week. And this week's Asshat is going to the MAC officials. Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know this was your call and your pick, so have at it, Broseph.
Yep, we'll segue from one almost upset to a game which should have been another almost upset, but ended up being an upset because the MAC officials completely botched, bungled, and screwed up the last 4 seconds of this contest. For those of you who knew exactly what happened, bear with me for a moment, but in a Saturday afternoon's game between Oklahoma State and Central Michigan, Oklahoma State was up, I think it was by 3 points, with 4 seconds to go. Fourth down for the Pokes. They were at around midfield. Oklahoma State decided, instead of punting, to line up in shotgun, and the quarterback threw the ball directly out of bounds. Triple zeros were on the final clock of the game, so everyone thinks the game is over. Well, no, it wasn't, because he threw the ball so far away from any intended receiver, the officials called intentional grounding. Now, here's where it gets really messy. So in college football, the game cannot end on an offensive penalty, and I have no idea, by the way, why this distinction is in the rule book. The game cannot end on an offensive penalty if the offensive penalty does not result in a loss of down. But because a intentional grounding penalty results in a loss of down, that means that the game should not have continued, and Central Michigan should not have been given an untimed down with the football. They were given that down. So Central Michigan, of course, as luck would have it, probably a 0.000% chance win probability even with this play. They throw a Hail Mary, which is caught, hook and lateral, touchdown for the Chippewas, and they win in Stillwater on a play that never should have happened. So that's part one of Asshat of the week. It's the MAC officials who messed up and gave Central Michigan the play to have a chance to win. The second aspect of our Asshat of the week is going to be the NCAA, who refuses to reverse the ruling here, which makes absolutely zero sense, because there's no chance that there's no chance that Central Michigan could have won the game if they decide to say that this play would not have happened. We saw the same thing with Duke and Miami last year, where penalties that should have been called would have cost the team that returned the kick for a touchdown the game, and then the game would have ended, and it would have been over. There would have been no recourse. There would have been no seconds on the clock for the team that should have lost the game, the team that should have won the game to win it. So it just boggles my mind. It's almost like they're failing the fourth dimensional test from Back to the Future 3 that Marty keeps failing when Doc keeps telling him about it. It's like there's no parallel universe where you could have a chance to win the game here. So why aren't we reversing the decision? We see it in professional wrestling, Michael. We see them reverse the decision. Why can't we see it in the NCAA?
Yeah. The way I think college football and the NFL handle the officiating, a lot of times it could be Bush League, and I know they do a lot of good things. But in situations like this, it's stuff we see all the time. The Des Bryant catch a couple of years ago that changed the rule after it was changed previously. What was that? I think it was actually the year before, the Calvin Johnson incident. And then a year later, we have another catch incident with Des Bryant, which cost them the game. I don't want to make it sound like it is easy to fine-tune all the rules and regulations of sports, because it is not. And I would never want to be an official. I would never want to make that call. But the higher-ups, they got to be able to get something done to make it more consistent, make it better. And I know I'm probably just sounding like a typical politician right now who doesn't have any ideas. I'm just going to sit here and spew out, hey, make it better, say words like that so it sounds good. But they really do, though. I didn't see this whole Mac thing, which is why I let Richard take the lead on this. That I was on vacation in New York, and also doing a conference for work. But, I mean, I don't understand the whole intentional grounding thing. Because if that's the case, if I'm a quarterback and I know that rule, I'm going to exploit it. If I got to play at the end of the game where I'm at the 6-yard line, I'm throwing a pass, and there's no one open, guess what? I'm just going to intentionally ground it, get my free play out of it. Like, I would certainly try to do that. I don't understand that rule at all.
Yeah, it's a rule that needs to get revisited, certainly. But the main point here is the fact that when a team has absolutely zero chance of winning the game, if you reverse a call that happened with 0 seconds on the clock, why is the NCAA so narrow-minded that they can't reverse the decision of the game? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you fix the call on the last play of the game, and then nothing can happen after that. It's not like you're fixing a call with 2 minutes on the clock, and then there's still 2 minutes for the team behind to catch up. There's triple zeros on the clock. Like,
right.
It just doesn't make sense to me. And that's why the NCAA is one half of our Asshat of the week this week.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that, but I think you said it best. This is one of those rare cases where it could have been reversed without controversy, except for from that fan base and from that particular school that won. But ultimately, get it right. Get it right. So, I don't know if I'll call them asshats still, but LSU, them fighting Tigers, they may have, after losing to Wisconsin, they may have found another answer at quarterback. Danny Etling, a stereotypical pocket passer. He tossed 3 touchdowns. Now, granted, they played Jacksonville State, who isn't a bad team. They're actually a pretty good I think they're FCS. I think they're part of the FCS division.
They are.
But they're pretty good. They always have been pretty good. Ryan Perlew actually attended school there after getting booted from LSU. And I mean, LSU got the W, but Danny Etling, like I said, he tossed 3 touchdowns in this game, and LSU's offense actually looked like a real offense. And it's still out of that typical power run based scheme. Back some options here, and maybe this is just a testament to how ours actually was. And Danny Etling comes in and he shines right away.
Story of where people set their expectations. When you look at Danny Etling's final and you compare it to where LSU was 2 drives into that game, coming off the quarterback situation seemed absolutely dire and in peril. To then take it, hitting guys in stride on time, it was just music to the ears of every Tiger fan. And it's that that LSU fans possibly could have wanted in that game. That, like, look, that there are some limitations to what Etling's going to be able to do, including an interception on a jump ball, which I think was a very defensible pass to throw and make a play. So by no means is LSU in the clear, and the state comes to town. But at least there's that hope. There's that belief. There's the to where all of your blood, sweat, and tears out on the field will not be for naught. And I think needs out of the quarterback position. They just need belief in the position. It's not going to totally, completely suck, because that's what Brandon Harris did in the first 2 drives of that game. And that's what he did for the large majority of the Wisconsin game, including his final pass in that game, which I just don't know what the heck he was thinking there. So, it was Jacksonville State. Like you mentioned, it's an FCS foe, but it is one that got to the championship game in FCS last year. This is a team that beat Kentucky last year. They gave Auburn everything they could handle 2 years ago and probably should have beaten Auburn. And they beat Ole Miss in overtime a few years ago. So Jacksonville State's a real team. They might not be in the same classification as LSU, but they are better than, I would say, at least 20 to 30 to 40 teams in the bottom tier of FBS. So they're a real team, and it was impressive what Danny Etling and the Tigers were able to do. And more than the stats, more than anything else, like I said, it's just the belief and the fact that they've got someone they can rally behind now and believe in.
Well, before I move on, I'm just going to go ahead and give a quick stat correction to myself, because I for some reason I thought Danny Etling, I didn't get to see a whole lot of the game. As I said, busy weekend, but they don't look pretty. But if LSU's able to move the ball, then for 4, and from here on out, what have you got to? Harris is going to do that to you anyway. Why not take the fly with a guy like Danny Etling?
I think that if Etling can look the way that he looked on Saturday, versus a national title, and I think that if Etling continues to play well, that the committee will come a couple years ago when they inexplicably lost at home to Virginia Tech, when they had quarterback issues, and it just wasn't right back in the national title discussion. I really do.
Going back, you had Jamarcus Russell and Marcus Randall both competing for the job, if I'm not mistaken.
2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
They just came out the gate and looked horrible.
Yeah.
And then we'll remember get in as the 4 seed, and then they dominate 2 games in a row and win that similar thing for LSU this year if they continue on that trajectory, where the first game's kind of thrown out.
Before it can certainly happen again, college football is interesting, and that's the appeal to it. Every game matters. And predict, but we'll see what's going to happen going forward with Danny Etling and But let's go ahead and move on here. So I'm about to tell you what is probably the grossest, most vile, but kind of funny story that happened to me in New York this weekend.
Funny for who? Not for you.
Right. So I was in New York yesterday, and we were walking through Central Park, and I had to use the bathroom. So go into the bathroom, find a stall, and I'm sitting there doing my business. Well, New York, if you've never been, it has a very heavy homeless population, and for most people, you probably don't have to go there to know that. It's in almost every movie that takes place in New York. You can see, if you've ever seen Home Alone 2, where Kevin McAllister is walking through the city at night, and there's people mumbling stuff to themselves and talking to themselves and, just being a crazy person. That is absolutely true. It happens all the time. In the 2 days I spent in the city, I couldn't even count on 2 hands the number of times I saw it. So anyway, I'm in Central Park. I'm sitting in this stall. Well, guess what happens? One of these crazy homeless people comes walking in to the stall. So I hear the mumbling, whatever. I don't think anything of it. I'll be fine. Well, he gets into the stall next to me, and I shit you not, I'm almost positive this guy missed the entire toilet for the entire duration he was peeing. And to make matters worse, I'm sitting there, my feet are on the ground. I just start feeling splashes of piss going on my leg.
Oh no.
At this point, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't have hobo stab insurance, so I'm not gonna go confront this guy. So I just lift my legs up, be like, all right, he won't be here long, whatever. So that's what I did, and yeah, not many people can say they've been peed on by a bum in New York, and I was.
Oh, congratulations! That'll stick with you. This homeless guy had about as good an aim as Brandon Harris on Saturday. Whoa. Man, I mean, you said earlier that you really got pissed off from this, but you didn't get pissed off. You got pissed on.
In the words of Stone Cold Steve Austin, like I always say, it's better to be pissed off than pissed on. Yeah,
and
no,
you found that out the hard way, didn't you?
No, I did. And then to make matters worse, so this wasn't the first time someone decided to, throw something my way, we'll say.
What a day.
I go back to my hotel room, or we go back to the hotel to grab our luggage, and I'm using the bathroom. I'm at one of the urinals, and I'm at the second to last one. Well, a police officer walks in. He starts walking towards the wall, which there's about a gap of 5 feet. He just sits there, stares at the wall for a second, and then I just hear, and then he just walks out the bathroom. So not only did I get pissed on by a bum, I got crop dusted on by the NYPD. What the fuck kind of city is this?
It's the city that never sleeps. It's the city that chews people up and spits them out, and now we see why. That's your typical human interaction in the Big Apple, isn't it?
And I'm not going to say I've never crop dusted on a person or walked past someone and silently farted. But no, this wasn't silent. Dude just was like, a slight leg lift and everything. I was.
He gave you the leg lift.
I'm just like, dude.
He even made room. Oh, no.
And the thing is, he's a police officer, so it's not like I could be like, hey, what the hell are you doing, dick? Because then I get slapped in the face with a baton. Not about that life.
You have to put up with that for a day. Now you can see why if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You can put up with that. You can survive anything.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting, and will I go back to that city? Absolutely, I will, because aside from those two happenings and the hustle and bustle, which I didn't like but expected, it is a very wonderful city. There's a lot of wonderful things you could do there, and Ground Zero, I want to just take a minute to talk about that for any of you listening, if you haven't been to Ground Zero, where the two towers were infamously crashed into on September 11th, 2001. I think most of us listening remember exactly where we were, what we were doing, who we were with, the whole nine, because it's a very vivid memory at 10 years old that'll never escape my mind. The serenity of the actual Ground Zero is unbelievable. Words cannot describe it, how moving it is, and I would suggest to everyone go see it, and also take the tour of the newly finished World Trade Center. It is a beautiful, beautiful building, and it is breathtaking seeing New York from the top. It is now the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. So very cool, very fun experience. So I would recommend doing that. So after getting pissed on by a bum and farted on by a cop, we're going to move on to some better and lighter talk here. And that is, of course, the NFL. So this week I trumped Richard in our pick'ems. Right now the standings sit. I'm at 4-1. Richard is at 3-2.
All because of Oh No Gano. If he makes that kick, we're looking at flip standings that I'm wearing.
Yeah, there was a lot of close games this weekend. It was certainly a great week one. Speaking of, I should have mentioned this with the New York story, but while I'm thinking about it, so there is actually a Saints bar in New York. It is called Bar None, and one of the guys I was with on our trip, a buddy of his had gone and was like, yo, for the Saints game, check out this place. It's called Bar None. Make sure you go to the back room. Now, we're thinking like, okay, back room. Like, I think we all know what happens in back rooms. You're either getting shot or, you know, you're getting a lap dance from somebody. But no, we walk into this bar, and it's actually a Saints and Vikings bar. So the Vikings were playing Tennessee, and we walk in, and all we see is a sea of purple. So we're like, dude, what the shit? Where's the Saints fan? So we're like, all right, let's check out this back room. I shit you not, there's decked out memorabilia of Saints stuff all over the place. And they have a DJ. They have a big screen with the Saints playing. And it is basically a Saints watch party. And, you know, the DJ's bumping the Who Dat songs, all the local beats we love down here for our Saints games. So if you're ever in New York during football season and the Saints are playing, the name of the place, again, is Bar None. Go there. You will not regret a second of it. It was so cool. I felt like I was back home for, you know, we wound up watching the fourth quarter there because it was jam-packed, so we wanted to get some food, get a couple of drinks, and we made our way back over there. But
So you saw the good part.
Yeah. Which we'll get into that.
That's the exciting part.
Yeah. It was a good game. I mean, despite the Saints losing, it was a fun game to watch. It had a lot of entertainment. It was a high-scoring game. Saw some really big plays, one of which we're going to talk about here a little later. But let's go ahead and start with our pick'ems. So, as we decided to establish last week's show, we pick our Thursday night, our Sunday night, Monday night, and then we have two Sunday games that are basically our wild card games that we'll just kind of pick and see which matchups we like. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Thursday night we have the Jets playing the Buffalo Bills. I'm not too. I don't want to say I'm excited about this game because I'm really not, but I'm not bummed out about this one like I am for the stinker we're going to get on Monday. I think this could be an interesting game. You got two really good defenses. It's a divisional game. Both need a win after losing close games. Buffalo lost in Week 1 by 6 to a good Baltimore Ravens team, and the Jets lost by 1 to another solid football team in the Cincinnati Bengals. So both are coming off close losses. Both are going to need a win, especially it looks like the Patriots aren't slowing down with Jimmy Garoppolo as they won against the Cardinals last week. But Buffalo and the Jets, man. Richard, I'll let you take lead on this one. Who are you taking Thursday night as the Jets are traveling to Buffalo?
Both teams had tough, close losses in Week 1. I'm going to take the Jets. I actually think that it's not too early in the season to say that the loser of this game will not make the playoffs this season. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. When you look at the Jets' schedule for the first portion of this season, it's probably the hardest schedule I've ever seen. They open up with Cincy at home, then they go at Buffalo on a short week, then they're at Arrowhead, then they're home for Seattle, then they're at Pittsburgh, at Arizona, and then home for the Ravens. That's their first 7 games. That is insane. This is a rare opportunity for the Jets to get a win, I think, in the first 7 games of the season. Wins that they're going to need whenever the schedule gets easier in the second half of the season. So I think the Jets are a better team. I think Buffalo's in a lot of turmoil right now with the Sammy Watkins foot flaring up again and with some of the defenders who they were counting on who are not there this season, Darius Ragland and others. I'm going to go with the Jets, but, I mean, when Rex Ryan's involved and when his former team's involved, anything can happen.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Jets here. And you had mentioned the injuries to Sammy Watkins and how banged up this Buffalo team is. Ultimately, I think this game's going to come down to the coaching and the injuries, and in that regard, New York Jets definitely have the better coaching staff there. So I'll also take the Jets here. Now, with one of our wild card games, we have a really good matchup this week as divisional rivals. Cincinnati Bengals are traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. So that's another really good game that I am super excited for. Both these teams coming off wins, as we just talked about with the Bengals. They were able to edge out the Jets, and then Steelers are coming off of a huge win, 38-16 against the Redskins, where we saw just exactly what that offense is going to be this year. It's not missing a beat, even with Le'Veon Bell out. That's a dangerous football team, and that's why I have them winning the Super Bowl. And their first loss, I'll go ahead and start this one off. It's not coming this week to the Bengals. I got the Steelers in this one. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think it will be a close game. But I could see the Steelers kind of getting that touchdown around the 4-minute mark to make the score look a lot worse than it should be.
Our two Super Bowl picks in this game, you had Pittsburgh, I had Cincinnati. So let's stay par for the course, and I'm going to take the Bengals here, even on the road. I really like this Cincinnati team in all facets of the game. It's just a tremendous roster. I like the poise of Andy Dalton to bring Cincinnati back late in the game last week, and I just think with some of the suspensions and injuries that Pittsburgh has, that Cincinnati's just ever so slightly better. So I'm going with the Bengals on the road.
All right. We have our first contrarian game, and again, we know how that worked out for Richard last week, so let's keep that trend going.
It's a long season.
We got a long one, that is certainly right, and I'm still going to kick your ass. I'm very confident in that. We also have the Chiefs and Texans. Not a very appealing game per se, but I think it's an interesting matchup. I think it's a good matchup. Osweiler got his win week 1. Now, granted, it was against the Bears, who arguably maybe the worst team in the NFL, perhaps. They could very well wind up with the first pick of next year's draft. It wasn't the best game for Osweiler, but he didn't do terrible. 22 of 35. He had 230 yards, threw a couple of touchdowns, did throw one interception. But even with mediocre quarterback play, this team's still built to win football games. They have a good defense. Will Fuller, he's really impressing a lot of people. He, in his debut, 5 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Meanwhile,
he looks like the real deal.
Yeah, him and DeAndre Hopkins, man, that's a nice little 1-2 punch.
Absolutely. And Braxton Miller's not looking half bad either.
No, so they got
some weapons in Houston finally.
And of course, you can't forget about Lamar Miller, who in his debut did exactly what was expected. He eclipsed 100 yards. Wound up with 4 catches. That was only for 11 yards, but all Brock Osweiler has to do is manage a game, not try to do too much, and this is a good football team that's going to win a lot of games, and I got them winning their second one this week. So I'll go ahead and take the Texans over the Chiefs this week.
Well, we're going to disagree again. The last time these two teams played, Kansas City shut out Houston, winning 30-0 in the first round of the NFL playoffs last year. Now, I know that this is going to be a much different Texans team because they aren't going to have a quarterback who's punch drunk in this game. But I just really like this Kansas City squad. I love the resolve and the heart that they showed last week, coming from behind to beat San Diego in overtime. There's just Kansas City is just one of those teams that you can never count them out. And like Cincinnati, they're just a complete roster from top to bottom with no weaknesses. Give me the Chiefs.
Yeah, and one of the things I think I'm most interested to see about this matchup in particular is that Kansas City pass rush and how Brock Osweiler manages that, because they have a very nasty 1-2 punch with Justin Houston and Tom Bahali. So I'm really curious to see what happens there. Now, Jamal Charles, I haven't been as up to date. Is he still expected to be out this week?
I'm not certain, but I don't even know if it really matters if he is.
Spencer Ware.
Number one fantasy running back last week, and if Spencer Ware's on the bench, they've got Sharkhandrick West, and if Sharkhandrick West is on the bench, they've got Niall Davis. I mean, you want to talk about an embarrassment of riches at running back, Kansas City has it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it really doesn't matter. Andy Reid's system is so running back friendly, and it doesn't matter who he's got. He can get the best out of him. So far we have 2 disagreements on our picks so far, as Richard took the Chiefs and I took the Texans on this one. Now, next game is our Sunday night game. We have the Packers visiting divisional rival Minnesota Vikings, and I fully expect Sam Bradford to get his beak wet this week. So with Sam Bradford under center, it's going to be interesting. But I'm sticking with the Packers, and I want to give a quick shout out to Jacksonville for they gave the Packers a hell of a game. And
they really did.
I thought that game was going to get ugly pretty quick, and it certainly didn't. Packers wound up edging them out by 4. So Jacksonville's another team that could be a real deal this year, and I was really impressed with them. But I think Packers. Anyway, Packers getting win number 2 this week at the Vikings.
As much as I want to pick the Vikings, I just can't do it. Their offense was just too stuck in the mud with Sean Hill. Their only 2 touchdowns were both defensive scores. Adrian Peterson, I think, only had about 30-something yards rushing.
Yeah, he got me a solid 3 points in fantasy this week.
It was not the most impressive offensive showing. And even though I love in capital letters Minnesota's defense, I just don't think it's going to be enough versus a fully functional Aaron Rodgers unit in Green Bay. So I'm going to take the Packers.
All right. So we both have the Packers here, and everything's looking a little similar to last week. We have 2 disagreements. But just to give you a quick recap of everything before we get into our Monday night game. So far, Richard and I have both taken the Jets over the Bills. Richard has the Bengals, I have the Steelers. Richard has the Chiefs, and I have the Texans, and we both agree on the Packers over the Vikings. So let's go ahead and pick our last game. Eagles at Bears. It's real simple for me. I'm going Eagles. Bears are a train wreck. And Eagles actually looked very convincing against the Browns. Carson Wentz did a solid job in his debut as their starting quarterback. 22 of 37, 278. And he had 2 touchdowns to go along with that. Ryan Matthews, not too shabby. Kenjon Barner changed it up, wound up averaging 10.5 yards a pop. Jordan Matthews had another solid game. Like, across the board, the Eagles just looked like a solid football team against the Browns. And Zach Ertz, now there's doubt that he's going to play this Sunday after sustaining his injury, but I don't think they're going to miss a beat against the awful Bears.
Yeah, if there's any doubt whatsoever that the NFL hates ESPN, look at this matchup. Monday Night Football, come on. There was no point at any point during this offseason where anyone said, you know what, I'd like to see those two teams play against each other. I have to take the Bears. I just can't pick Carson Wentz on the road in his first road start. So even though I hate Jay Cutler, I hate his body language, I hate the way he played last week, you're just never going to win with him, but I think they'll win this game. So I'm going to take the Bears.
Well, after picking all 5 games, Richard, one of two things is either going to happen. You're going to close the gap and take the lead, or you're digging yourself the grave. And I'm going with the latter, so lie in it, buddy.
We'll see. That's what's great about the NFL. It keeps you entertained.
Now,
we'll see.
Last week we also touched on some fantasy advice. Let's go ahead and get back to that. Really excited about that. I shit the bed last week in 2 of my leagues. I did pick up the win in my big money league. That was without Le'Veon Bell and Jamal Charles, so I'm pretty happy about that. And for anyone who may have listened to me and sat Kelvin Benjamin, I apologize. I did the same thing, and I paid for it in one of my leagues, so I'm right there with you. I'll go ahead and mark myself as an asshat for that call last week. That was stupid. This guy clearly isn't affected by the injury, and he's still a damn good receiver. But let's go ahead and get into it. I'll go ahead and start this off with the with who you should start this week. The first one I'm going to say is a guy I'm still high on. I have been high on. I have him in 2 of my leagues, and he was stolen from me in a 3rd league, and that's Steve Smith Sr. of the Ravens. If there was any doubt about how much of a role he's going to have in Baltimore, leave no more doubt, because he led the team with 9 targets, and he was on the field for the most plays as far as receivers go last week. Although he didn't have the stat line, he's getting the volume still. He's still getting the looks. So they're playing Cleveland this week. I think Steve Smith's a safe bet.
Yeah, I do too. He led the Ravens with 9 targets last week, so he's their main guy. Even with the emergence of Perriman and Mike Wallace, Steve Smith's still going to be their main target monster. I'm also going to start Joe Flacco versus the Browns this week. I mean, let's be real for a moment. Cleveland probably only has 2 starting caliber players in their entire defense. That is a horrible, horrible defense. So I'm going to be looking to start guys versus the Cleveland Browns all year. That's Steve Smith Sr. and Joe Flacco this week. I'm also going to be looking to start players versus the New Orleans Saints this year, especially without Delvin Breaux for the next 5 or 6 weeks. That means Eli Manning. That means Victor Cruz. That means Sterling Shepard. That means Rashad Jennings. New Orleans' defense, as bad as it was last week in the second half without Breaux, I think it's going to stay that bad. And I'm just going to be looking to start guys versus Saints as much as I can.
Yeah. Tell you what, with the Saints and everything going on with them, they are who we thought they were. They are who we thought they were.
Absolutely.
Offense is still there. The defense is still a shit show. And they do have some young pieces in place that I like, but I just don't know what to make of it anymore. The defense is terrible. So as far as some other players you might want to consider starting, another one is Mohamed Sanu versus Oakland, who was the worst versus wide receivers last week. And Mohamed Sanu got 8 targets last week, and he had I believe, a pretty solid day. So I think he's going to be a damn good player over there in Atlanta.
Yep, and also his quarterback, Derek Carr, tore up the Saints last week. Atlanta pass defense, with the exception of Desmond Trufant, not much better than the Saints. So I think Derek Carr is going to have a huge game versus the Falcons. And the last start that we have for you, and this is only if you're just in a fix and you're desperate, again, if you're desperate, Trevor Siemian versus Indianapolis. Indy is just atrocious defensively, just like Cleveland, just like the Saints, just like Atlanta. So if you're in a deep league and if you're desperate, take a look at Siemian this week.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about some of the guys we're going to sit this week who maybe slow the roll on. We'll go ahead and start with this guy. He's your classic case of hit and miss. He's never a bad player to have. It's just so tough to tell what he's going to do. And this week, Tavon Austin, as they're playing Seattle. So you already know that secondary's bringing the heat. I would absolutely sit Tavon Austin, and I don't think it's even a debate. Even if he does somehow blow up with a big game, just know you made the right call because you're playing the odds here.
Right. And I would say for all you people who are finally waiting on Melvin Gordon to score not only his first but his second career rushing touchdown last week versus the Chiefs, I'm going to say slow your roll just a little bit. Going up against a Jacksonville front that was very stout versus Green Bay last week. Malik Jackson really looks like he's a good fit in Jacksonville, and with a lot of those other pieces that they've brought in fit in the NFL. And another thing about Gordon is that even though he got 2 touchdowns last week, be more optimistic about Gordon today than you were last week at this time, but slow your roll a little bit. Your weak starter yet.
Yeah, and this is what's going to be interesting moving forward, and this is something that happens every year in fantasy, which is why I hate the first 4 weeks of fantasy season, because you do have a lot of guys who they go apeshit, but then they disappear after 3 weeks, and you never hear about them again. It's very common, so these conversations are certainly going to change a lot more in 3 weeks. But another guy we were thinking you should probably pump the brakes on is good old Frank Gore with Indy. Had a solid week last week as he was the number 2 running back. But he's playing Denver this week, and that defense, we all know how much they swallow people. So he's not going to have a lot of light at the end of his tunnel this week, especially with the offensive line that's in Indy.
And my last sit is going to be Matt Forte versus the Buffalo Bills. Forte had a really nice debut to the Jets last week versus Cincinnati. But he got touches in the high 20s. It's a short week this week. They're at Buffalo Thursday night. One of the older running backs in the NFL. Will his body be able to recover on a short week? The Bills really shut down the Ravens' run game last week. I would consider sitting Matt Forte if you have better options this week.
Yeah. Now, Richard, just to have a little fun here, man, how did fantasy go week 1 for you?
I was 2-3, should have been 3-2 because you just refused to use fractional points, Michael. But we can fight about that some other time.
No, we can fight about that right now. We got time.
Okay.
So
let's fight about it right now.
So
I'm a fractional points guy.
So
I feel like 9 yards should not equal 0 yards, and 10 yards is a fair and equitable way to do it. And fractional points screwed me last week, so it makes me a losing record.
Let me just set the scene here. So I refuse to do fractional points for that. But the reason why I don't like the fraction, essentially, if you're going to do fractional points, why not just do a point for every yard that someone gains?
That's the point of fractional points.
And I hate that. And do you know why? Because this is America, Richard, and you either get the point or you don't. There's none of this in-between shit. And if I fall harder than the GOP has because of my stance on that, so be it.
Like George Washington, Ben Franklin say you either get the point or you don't. Like, where'd that come from? Not play with fractional points.
You know what, Richard? I'm going to Google right now an American who said that. But
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. But before we start our game versus each other next week in fantasy, I'm going to play a national anthem. I'm going to kneel down for it. Just to show you how un-American it is to be playing with these non-fractional points.
Well, trying to figure this out. Yep, can't find anyone.
And of course, what do you know? And I did the math, and if we had done fractional points, I would have won that game. Of course.
Yeah, well, it could be worse. He could be like our good friend Brandon. Shout out to him, and he brought a spreadsheet to the draft. Hashtag nerd life. But hey, Brandon,
and then he didn't use it. He brought it, but he overruled his computer over and over again.
Yeah, but hey, he's doing something right. But man, that league is going to be fun. And then our keeper league.
I did pretty well. I came from behind and won. That kind of pushed me over the top toward the end. So thank you for that trade, by the way.
Yeah.
Getting D'Angelo Williams for 3 weeks before I get to have Le'Veon Bell back. That I really appreciated you helping me out.
Yeah, well,
nice of you.
I have plenty of running backs to spare in that league, and I was like, you know what? Deion Lewis is young and hurt, but, that's why it's keeper league. And speaking of injuries, just want to give a shout-out to my boy Keenan Allen for getting hurt yet again. Why did I take him in the keeper league? So anybody, any friend who's in this league, consider this the announcement that Keenan Allen is now on the trade block. And you can give me a Snickers bar at this point, and I'll get rid of him.
You might have an offer from me. I'll keep that in mind. Even though he's no spring chicken, he'll have value next week if he's next year if he's in the league.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. It was a fun week in fantasy. I'm just glad that we have that back. Another player that put up a dud for me this week, good old Todd Gurley. Oh. But really glad I decided to start Carlos Hyde, though. So it was interesting. But let's go ahead and move on. We have our Athlete of the Week coming up. And I might piss off a lot of Saints fans with this one, but so be it. I want to give a shout out to Michael Crabtree. Game is on the line. Raiders are going for 2. He's got blanket coverage all over him. And your boy goes up and makes the play to win the Raiders that ball game. These are the moments athletes live for, and I know that's cliche, and I don't care. I'm a former journalist. I'm a walking cliche. But, man, the Saints had the coverage. They did. And Crabtree just said, nope, not today. And he went up and got it. He mossed his ass. And I got to give the big shout out to him. Big-time players make big-time plays, and I never thought I'd be saying this about Michael Crabtree, but your boy has revived his career in Oakland.
Yeah. And not only did he win the game by making the catch, but he also won the game by getting a penalty. And I mean that. Hear me out for a second. He got a 15-yard penalty that pushed the Raiders' kickoff back 15 yards. So instead of Janikowski booming it out of the back of the end zone and no time coming off the clock and the Saints getting the ball to 25, they instead wasted 7 seconds on the return, a return that they had to make. And they only brought it back to about the 15-yard line. So the Saints lost 7 seconds and 10 yards because Crabtree got that penalty. So kudos to him. That's what I'm talking about. That's being a PTPer right there.
Yeah, man. Speaking of that, so the how about the 61-yard field goal attempt by the Saints that I think everyone in that bar was at thought was good. It looked good, and they wound up missing it.
I thought it was good in the stadium. It had the distance. It was just ever so slightly off to the left. But, man, I mean, the Saints really have no one to blame for themselves for having 0 timeouts going into that drive. So they burned some of those timeouts for stupid reasons in the second half and came back to bite them at the very end. You never know when you're going to need timeouts, even if you're in the lead. And that reared its ugly head for New Orleans.
Most certainly did. But other than that, we got week 1 wrapped up of the NFL season, and I'm ready to bring on week 2. So I'm sure we'll see you guys next week. If you haven't done so already, make sure you like the Facebook page. Go follow the blog, hotardhuddle.com. For Richard Fischer, this is Michael Hotard. And as per usual, if you don't like the show, We don't care. All right. Talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Can't wait to be by an even number of points in fantasy next week, Michael. An even number of points.
Whatever, Richard. You're adopted, and your parents don't even love you. And on that note, okay, bye.
All right, well, that's a wrap, Mike. Let me go ahead and turn this thing off real quick.
Hold up, dude. What the hell are those squiggly lines?
Like a heartbeat at a doctor's office?
No, dude. What the hell? You been recording this? You told me this was off the record.
Yeah. Drink it in, man.